From the KSL Broadcast House, this is Sunday Edition with Doug Wright.
Good morning and welcome to Sunday Edition. I'm Deanie Wimmer in for Doug Wright this week. Utah lawmakers returned to their seats at the state capitol this week for the 45-day general legislative session. And Governor Cox, in his State of the State address, announced his priorities for Utah. 1 week down, and it's clear this year's session is not starting off business as usual.
There has never, ever been a better time in the history of the world to be alive than right now. And there has never been a better place in the history of the world to live than right here in Utah.
Governor Cox wants the state of our state to be hopeful, and he outlined an agenda that gives us reasons to be, 1 billion of them in a $1 billion tax cut. But that's not all. He also wants to boost the quality of life for young people, teachers, families, so that we can be a model for the nation. The governor joins me now this morning. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be with you again, Deanie.
Thank you. You've had a busy day. Your state, you want our state to focus a lot on what you call the pursuit of happiness at a time where there's a lot of unhappiness. It's an important message.
It really is. So the Declaration of Independence, of course, talks about these unalienable rights that we have: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These rights that came to us from our Creator, and government exists to protect those rights. But I talked in my speech about how important it is to pursue happiness and what that really means and what happiness is. What we're finding is people are lonelier than ever before, at least as long as we've been keeping these metrics and doing these surveys, that there is too much unhappiness out in the world. And so focusing on what really makes people happy and what matters. And it really is about our community. It's about our friends, our family, our faith, those things, work that serves others. And again, government's role to protect that. And I really wanted to highlight that for the state.
Government's role to protect it, but not to ensure it,
yes,
but to get out of the way so that people can do that.
Exactly. And that's so important. Government doesn't make us happy. That's not what the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution said. That's not what it was about. But again, to protect our ability to pursue that happiness. And sometimes we get that mixed up a little bit. Government is not intended to make us happy. And so my job as the governor is to try to make sure the government is doing the right things and not the wrong things.
I was interested, you spoke to the next generation of Utah, the young people of Utah, and you encouraged them to pursue happiness in a way that can be a model for the world. What does that look like?
Well, you know, it's interesting. This had never been done before. We had legislators bring their kids and grandkids onto the floor of the House of Representatives for the speech. My daughter was there, my 16-year-old daughter, and it's about giving back. We know where this happiness comes from. A big focus on families and how important families are. Doing more for our families at risk. Doing more for our foster kids and our foster families in this state. But every young person in this room, I wanted them and every young person in our state to understand that we had challenges when we were young. There's a lot of fear out there, and we can overcome those challenges together. I really believe in our young people. I believe in this next generation, and I'm so excited for what they're going to accomplish.
When you look at those metrics that you referred to, these aren't frivolous matters. These are serious, actual health issues that are different in this generation.
Yeah, what we're seeing is loneliness amongst elderly people, for example, is worse than obesity, worse than smoking in some cases. The dangers and the health risks from just being lonely. Of course, we've seen a significant increase when it comes to depression, anxiety, self-harm, and I talked a lot about social media and the impact that we know social media is having on our young people, and the things that we can do to get away from that. And again, focusing on those 4 core values: faith, family, friendships, and work that serves others.
One way to invest in the next generation is through their education. You proposed giving teachers the biggest raise in the state's history.
Yeah, this is a really big deal. I talk about how we've done studies at Utah State. There's a big study that shows that the biggest variable in a student's outcome is the quality of the teacher. So I like to say, if we ran an experiment with 2 identical students and I got to choose the teacher, I let you choose everything else. You can choose the curriculum, the books, the school building, everything else. I will win every time because a teacher matters that much. And if we want to have the best students, the smartest students, the best economy, we have to have the best teachers. If we're going to do that, we need to compensate them and invest in them. And that's what we're proposing. And it seems to be well received this year by the legislature.
$6,000 per teacher.
Yes.
It's tied right now to what many call the school voucher bill that would provide funding for parents to take their children to private schools or other options. Why tie them together?
Well, that was never my intention to tie them together, but the legislature has decided that they wanted to tie them together. And of course, that's fine. That's the legislature's prerogative. What I had said in the past was that I would not support that type of a bill, that type of a voucher bill, unless we were doing more to fund education. And so the proposal that we put out there, over $400 million in new investment in teachers and in our schools, that is a huge deal. Again, record funding for schools, which will make it easier for them to compete in this world where some of that money, and it's a fairly small amount, I think about 42 million, somewhere in there, that would be available for students if they wanted to go to private schools. But look, I'm less worried about that. We've done some polling that shows that over 90% of Utah parents are really happy with their schools and their kids' schools, and so
and their teachers,
yeah.
Especially
their teachers. I mean, that's, people judge their school by their teachers, right? That's what matters. And so I feel really confident. I'm proud of our public schools. Yes, there are things we can do better. And if we get them the amount of funding that they need, they will be able to do those things better.
Okay. You've talked about, well, we've seen a focus on a couple of bills that deal with transgender youth. Yeah. One that prohibits, puts a mandate or a moratorium on the blockers, one that bans surgeries for minors. You've said, let's take the emotion out of this issue. What do you mean by that? Well,
look, it's so hard, and we had a bill last year, very controversial bill, and unfortunately, with the culture wars that we have happening right now, anytime you kind of step into this space, there's going to be divisiveness and just this toxic mentality that is out there. What I'm talking about is let's take that out and let's just look at the science and the research. And there is science coming out now, and a lot of scientists, researchers who are concerned about what they're seeing with some of these procedures and medications with our transgender youth, with bone density and other things. And we really don't have good data and good studies on the long-term effects of these surgeries and decisions, medications that are impacting young people. And so the bill, which Senator Kennedy, who is a doctor who treats some of these patients, has come out with, is just saying, hey, let's just pause. We're going to put a moratorium. We're going to get the best research we can find, and if we have to do additional research, we will. Collect the best research, make sure that we're not doing long-term damage to young people who are going through these procedures. Now, that doesn't mean that that they can't live life the way that they choose, but if we're going to have medical interventions, we want to make sure that they're doing the right things and not the wrong things long term. Again, really hard. I get it. Really controversial. I understand why people are angry and upset, and so we'll see what happens. The bills are moving through right now, but they haven't crossed the finish line yet.
Got some discussion left on that. One other health issue that you've mentioned, and I thought it was an interesting sign of the times, that we're looking at social media as an actual health issue for children. You issued a challenge to the social media companies.
I did. Yeah, look, the data here is so concerning. And starting in about 2010, we just see, if I had the chart in front of you, it would astound most parents who haven't seen it. When you look at anxiety, depression, self-harm, especially among young women, it more than doubles before the pandemic. So from 2009 to 2019, we see this just skyrocket. And we have more and more data now, more and more research coming out that shows that we know now. And by the way, every parent knows this.
Every parent does.
We all have gone through this, and we, no matter how you try to lock it down and try to make it more difficult, everybody else is doing it, makes it so concerning. And the worst part is that we now know that these social media companies know it and knew it and have known it for a long time and tried to hide some of that research, their own research and data. A lot like happened with opioid companies and big tobacco for a long time. And so we are very serious about this. We have several bills, legislators that are working on these bills, and We're going to do more to hold social media companies accountable and to give parents more tools, making sure that we get these apps out of the classroom, so at least when you're in class you can focus and not be focused on your phone and other things that are distractions. Looking at it more like we look at alcohol, cigarettes, tobacco, you know. No, that's exactly right. And again, if these numbers were happening anywhere else, if they were happening, you know, with cancer or anything else, like, we would be doing everything possible to change or to stop and prohibit what's happening. But because it's like technology, we just kind of shrug our shoulders as a nation. And I think we're done with that here in Utah. In fact, I'm done with it, and I know the legislature is as well. Okay, we'll pause here. We want to take a little break, but we have more to discuss with the governor, including when we come back, Utah's unconventional way of addressing Utah's water issues. It raised some eyebrows, but it's paying off. And efforts to make Utah housing more affordable. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking with Governor Spencer Cox today about a number of issues on the priority list for lawmakers during this year's general session. Two of those topics are also top of mind for Utahns: water, conserving the Great Salt Lake, and affordable housing. Governor, since we're talking not business as usual, you encouraged Utahns of all faith to pray for water. And you said that you had critics that made fun of that effort, and yet we just saw in our snowpack totals that for the first time in a long time, our snowpack is above 200% in some areas. Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I mentioned in my speech this week that I pray every night and give thanks for that incredible snowpack. In fact, I put $5 million in my budget 2 months ago before we had any storms for flood mitigation. You're that hopeful. I have that much faith that it's going to happen. And I do believe, I said there is a power in faith. I believe that there is power. I have been made fun of. I've been the butt of national jokes because of it. But I make no excuses for my faith. I believe when people of all different faiths come together to petition a higher power for help, that there is real power in that. I also said, but if not, I believe God can fill the lake, but if not, then we will. We have to do our part. And so I'm proposing $500 million for additional water conservation, more bills to help limit the amount of water use per capita in our state. And we did this. We had 12 bills last year and $500 million last year. It is making a difference. By the way, the lake is up more already this year than all of last year, and that's a miracle. No one can explain it to me. They told me it couldn't happen. All of this water that came in a short amount of time is already making it to the lake. Rose a foot is what we reported. And so you said, you know, while that's encouraging, we do have to do the work of conservation. What are the bills specifically to help the Great Salt Lake, or what efforts are you looking at? Yeah, so a couple things that we're looking at. Again, one is the funding piece, and the way we would use that funding is for agriculture optimization. I also ask people to stop demonizing our farmers. Look, our farmers are the backbone of our state and nation, and food requires water as an input, and we are so fortunate that we have farmers and ranchers that are doing that work. However, we have an opportunity right now. The technology has improved so much over the last 20 years that we can grow more food with significantly less water. So these ag optimization projects are allowing farmers to do just that, to grow more food, use much less water, and get that water into our reservoirs and into the Great Salt Lake. So that's going to be the biggest focus. Investing in those measures. Investing in those measures. We'll also do a little bit about actually getting water rights for the Great Salt Lake, something that has never happened before. We have lots of people really interested in that, and so there are some wonderful public policy pieces that are moving forward. Okay, let's talk about affordable housing. Yeah. I've heard you joke that we want our kids to be able to live by us, just not with us, in the same house. But to do that, we need and we want affordable housing in Utah. Yeah, and so another big portion of my speech was focused on the affordable housing piece. We've actually been working over the past year with the legislature, the League of Cities and Towns, others who are interested in this space. It's very simple. It's supply and demand. And when you have more demand than you have supply, the price goes up. So we need more supply. That's the only way to really lower the price of housing. And government plays a role here. Every decision government makes that affects housing increases the price of housing. And not just the decisions we make, but the time it takes us to make that decision. If we can make decisions and get approvals through on development in a few months, that can lower the price of housing. If it takes a year or two, that significantly increases it. Those are the types of things we're working on. And there's another piece. We have buildable lots right now where no houses are being built because we don't have the infrastructure there. So we're working on creative ways for infrastructure funding to help so that we can start to build on those lots. They don't need additional approval. They're already ready to go. And that can really help us increase the supply. We estimate right now that we're about 30,000 units short in our state. That's down, by the way, from 46,000 units 2 years ago when I took office. So we're getting there, but we still have a long ways to go. And we really are committed. The good news is this is something that we can fix as a state.
It's one of those things that you wanted to address for this generation. They're looking at it as perhaps the first generation where they're going to be worse off than their parents. And you said not on our watch.
Yeah, that's really important to me. There's some national studies that have been done that show that this is the first generation in history that believes they're going to be worse off than their parents. Part of that is their ability to buy a home. And so I just firmly believe that we reject that. Our fate is not written in the stars. We get to decide if the next generation is better off than us. And we have to be willing to make those sacrifices, make those decisions, collectively work together to make sure the future is brighter. And I'm so optimistic. Again, I believe that Utahns care about the next generation. I hope we're less selfish than maybe some other places. And I know I'm committed to doing that. I believe the legislature is as well. And I'm really excited because we're going to do this. We're going to bring down the cost of housing.
All right, well, we're going to talk about some other bringing down costs. After the break, we'll talk about the historic tax relief proposal, and we'll get the governor's final thoughts on the future of our state when we come right back. Welcome back. We're talking with Governor Spencer Cox on our show today. In our final few minutes, let's talk about tax cuts. You are proposing a historic $1 billion in tax relief for Utah families. We surveyed other states. Many are giving something, but we're in an enviable position in Utah about the ability to actually fund government and manage tax cuts.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you pointed out the and. I think that's the crucial conjunction in this conversation, because I hear it all the time. We have these issues that we need to work on. Why would you consider giving a tax cut? I'm like, well, that's the blessing of living in Utah. Because we've made wise decisions as government, we've spent less than we bring in. We have a AAA bond rating, one of the few states that does. We have more in savings than we've ever had in our history. And by the way, over the past 2 years, we already did a record $300 million in tax cuts, which is incredibly exciting. But look, with inflationary pressures, my philosophy is very simple. I believe that Utah families can spend that money better than I can. And so we have this unique opportunity to give significant tax relief to Utah families, and the legislature is supportive. And I just want to underscore why we can do this. We can do it because we have the best economy in the nation, not because we have the best governor, not because we have the best legislature, but because we have the best entrepreneurs, we have the best employees, we have the best workforce, we have the best businesses. Our economy is booming and has been booming for several years right now. We've led the nation in GDP growth over the last 10 years. We have the lowest unemployment in the nation. All of these things make it possible for us to fund government, do some things we've wanted to do for a long time, like build trails, start a historic trails project between cities. Very excited about that, and give historic tax relief to families.
It is an enviable position to be in Utah. One of the other things that I heard you talk about in your State of the State was you would like to have a state where there are no foster children.
Yeah.
That's a unique and a different statement, where you not only have no foster kids, but then Utah families also supporting those foster families.
Yeah. So the idea being, we think we can be the first state in the nation to have no foster kids waiting for families, right? Every state has a waiting list right now, kids who need families. So the First Lady, my amazing best friend and wife, Abby Cox, is getting ready to launch an initiative very soon where we will do just that. Recruiting new foster families, better supporting our existing foster families, becoming the first state in the nation to have families waiting for children instead of children waiting for families. And then surrounding them with support from thousands of families who are willing to take a meal. Every Friday we're going to bring a meal over to your house, or let us do some babysitting, let us do some childcare for you, or we'll give car rides to soccer practice, so that families are willing to take on these amazing kiddos who just desperately need some love and attention and a family, and know that these families will have the support to make that happen.
You talked about every child deserving a family, being loved by a family. So you've talked a lot about education, about foster kids. One of the other things was child tax credits, even for unborn children, to expand that.
This is, again, if we know there's big change with the Supreme Court when it comes to abortion, right? And if we believe in life and we believe in all life, then we need to support families who are having kids, especially single mothers, and doing more there. We also, I believe, if we give a tax break for kids when they're born, we should give a tax break for parents who are expecting as well. And so the idea would be to double up, so you would actually get 2 tax credits when a child is born, one for the time you were pregnant, for the 9 months before, and then one for the child for that year moving forward. And it's been very well received. We're excited about it, and it's just going to help new families who need all the help they can get.
Just along the policy front, you know, we've talked about how these are unconventional ways of looking at policy and announcements, but are there other things at the Capitol that are not business as usual? For instance, the tone seems a little different. The amount of work that's gone on ahead of time so that we're not passing budgets the final minutes of at midnight on the last night. I mean, you know, there seems to be things that are getting done earlier than normal. Yeah,
look, Utah's been recognized nationally for many years now as one of the best managed states, as one of the most fiscally responsible states. And I have to give credit to the legislature, to the Senate President Adams, and to the Speaker of the House, Brad Wilson. They really have worked hard, and we've worked hard with them over the interim. So over the course of the year, they're not just out vacationing and taking time off, even though they're a part-time legislature. They have real jobs. They are working, and we are working with them. We have this Unified Economic Opportunity Commission, myself, the Speaker, and the President working together with our cabinet members, other legislators, higher ed, public ed, all working together to get big things ready so that when the legislature comes around, we're ready to move forward on those big things. And you are right. I don't think we've ever seen so much legislation happening in the first week. I tell people all the time that week 1, which we just finished, feels like week 6 or week 7, the last 2 weeks of the session. And that's truly remarkable. And you know I hate when things happen on the very last night of the session. It's one of the reasons I vetoed a bill last year. Surprises that come forward. We have 45 days to do this. We don't have to wait till the last day. And I'm so grateful the legislature is taking that seriously.
All right. Well, we've got a lot of time, kind of, relatively, but we'll see what happens. It's nice to hear optimism at a time when there's a lot of people who think there are reasons not to feel very optimistic. But in Utah, that's not the case.
I'm the luckiest governor in the world, and we're the luckiest people in the world.
We believe that, too. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us on this episode of Sunday Edition. We hope you'll join us next week. Premier League soccer's next between Arsenal and Manchester United.